Good evening, everyone, and happy Thursday. And that means Mid-American Gardener Day. So we are here on our Facebook Live. Hopefully, you just tuned in to watch the show. And now we're here to do the after show where you get to ask your questions live of our panelists. I'm your host, Tanisha Spain. And with us tonight are two of our veteran panelists. So we'll have them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about their specialty. So, Kelly, we'll start with you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Alsop, and I am a horticulture educator from University of Illinois Extension. I am based out of Bloomington. My specialty is integrated pest management. However, I have a passion for actually the good parts of bugs. I don't want to kill them all. I love pollinators. I love beneficial insects. And then I dabble in a little bit of vegetable gardening. So that tends to be where my passions lie.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And a veteran to the show, but a first timer on our stay at home edition. John, tell them a little bit about yourself.
My name is John Bodensteiner. I'm a Vermilion County Master Gardener. I do most of my things in Danville, but I actually live in Bismarck, Illinois, which is just north of Danville. We live out in the country, and as far as plants, I like trees, shrubs, evergreens. I like herbaceous. I like perennials. I like annuals. I guess my biggest passion is probably hostas. I have 300 varieties. Being I like the trees, I ended up with a lot of shade, so now I have a lot of. That was one of the few things I had to get was hostas. So. I have 300, like I said, 300 different varieties and many varieties of each one of those, or plants of each one of those. So I probably have close to 10,000 hostas in my yard in different areas. So.
Oh my gosh. You'll have to give us a tour one day soon, John, because
you're going to have to.
That just sounds impressive.
I did send some pictures for show and tell, my show and tell today. So of the little bit of the yard, I just took a few pictures and walked around. I can do a more. I'm going to try to do a video. I'm going to get my grandson to help me with the video.
There you go. There you go.
He got a new setup where he has a straight line microphone and all that. So he said he can do me good. So we'll see.
Okay. Well, since we're already talking about your hostas, let's go ahead and start with your show and tells. And is that what your photos are of your yard? Okay, wonderful. So walk us through them.
Okay, that's a lot of people are asking about pawpaws. That's the pawpaws so far this year. They're still kind of small, but that's the fruit. And the leaves get to be, about 10 inches up to 12 inches long, and they look almost tropical. But and then a couple of the butterflies use that as their home base. So I have two trees, and I get usually a couple gallons of pawpaws, which is the largest native fruit in the United States. Bigger than because apples and all the others are really not native to the United States or even North America. So
do those keep well? My mom has told me that you have to eat them relatively quickly after they're picked.
Yeah, you have to pick them relatively quickly. That's why you don't see them in grocery stores and things like that. Because they do not store well. They freeze well. Once you process, you can freeze them just like persimmons and things like that. They don't store well either. So,
gotcha. Okay.
That is circle flower around one of my little beds. It is one of those that everybody. I had a garage sale last weekend. Everybody wanted to know what that was. So it lasts. I do have a variegated one, which I don't think I got a picture of. But that one is very popular. I think it's in the Artemisia family, so it does tend to spread a little bit, but not as bad as some of the others. So there's just another shot of the yard. Next. That is one of the leaves I make. I make cement leaves out of some of the leaves I grow. I grow a lot of elephant plant, the elephant leaves, and that's one of them that's almost 40 inches long. So it takes a little bit of cement, and I paint them, and it takes me about 6 weeks to get from the leaf to final mode. So I thought I'd just show one of those that I made.
Very pretty.
A couple weeks ago on another, I believe at one of our extension shows, somebody was asking about the Aurelia Sun King. So that's what the tree, the little shrub in the lower right hand corner is. Stays yellow. Loves. I grow it in the hosta bed, and it just does wonderful. And it just adds a different dimension to the hostas. And I've got that is butter daisy. That's one of my favorite new annuals. It reseeds and it grows to about a foot in diameter and about a foot high, and will bloom profusely until freeze. So butter daisy. Next. Also, we had a question about chameleon plant. You know, around, that's another one of my leaves, but all around that is chameleon plant. And I started 3 years ago with a little 3-inch plant, and you can see how it's taken over. So be very cautious unless you have an area that you can contain it, because it will spread very, very profusely.
Similar to the Jerusalem artichokes that you gave me last year.
This is even worse. That's just another shot of the yard. So I just took some pictures of the yard around, and again, that's some more of my hostas. Like I said, I have 300 varieties of hostas, so they're in everywhere, in all the beds. And that's the Aurelius again, the Sun King. I wanted to get a good close up of it. So, but we've had a lot of questions on that since that show. So.
Well, John, we have a question specific to hostas while you're talking. Kristen writes in, do hostas need to be planted in complete shade, or can they handle morning sun? What are your thoughts on that?
They can handle morning sun. In fact, some of them can handle all day sun if they are well watered. If they are in a wet area, they will take pretty much not 8 hours intense sun, but they will take filtered sun with no problem, but they do need to be in a moisture area. And some of the, like the Sun King, that one is actually, it's a yellow hosta, is actually promoted as being made for full sun. So there are some that are made for full sun, but the ones that do not do well in full sun are the blue ones. That is a waxy covering over a green leaf, and it tends to give a blue shade. So if they get in full sun, it burns that off, and then you end up with a green leaf, and then it tends to blister pretty good. So
okay, all right, Kelly, you started. Oh, I'm sorry.
I would stay away from the blue ones if they have full sun.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. You started to say something.
Oh, the reason we were talking about the Aurelia, the Sun King, on the show, because it's the perennial plant of the year this year. Oh. And so that was, we were talking with Martha Smith, and she's part of that Perennial Plant Association, and they choose, a plant to celebrate each year. It always has to be really, really, really high performing type of plant. And so now it's gained a little popularity. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I think I want one now. I just need a spot for it.
I've had it for about 5 years, and each year it gets a little bit bigger. It does die back to the ground, which is no big problem, because then you can clean it up, and it's one of the first to come up, and it's really yellow in the spring. It turns to just kind of like your yellow hostas. It tends to green up a little bit, especially if you have a lot more sun. So, but it is a wonderful plant.
Okay. All right, Kelly, we'll move to your show and tell.
The Bee Blitz?
Yes.
Okay. Bee Spotter is a program that is run through the University of Illinois, and it's a way to get information about bee distribution throughout the state of Illinois. So what happens is you go on to Bee Spotter, you sign in, and then you submit pictures of bees that you have taken. And what they'll do is they will identify those bees for you. But then the good part for them is then they get a little bit of an idea about bee distribution throughout the state of Illinois. And so, we have, for instance, we have a professor named Sydney Cameron, and she's working with bumblebees, and she's trying to figure out what's going on with the bumblebees and why have a reduced population of bumblebees. So they're really interested in bumblebees and honeybees. So on June 27th, they're going to have a bee blitz. So you're like, what's a bee blitz? Well, a bee blitz is where all on one day throughout the state of Illinois, people take images of bees and upload it to this website. And you can do it anytime. It's just a promotional thing, and it's just a way to get more people to do it. What they've found, Tanisha, is that all the bees are located in Chicago.
Wow. Interesting. That's a phenomenon.
Yes. So, not that you shouldn't submit bee spottings if you live in Chicago, but if you live in the rest of the state, it'd be really nice for them to have that information to be able to make, to be able to, find out what's going on. And, that way we don't lose our bumblebees.
Absolutely. We'll be out there. So I know we're going to take part in that for sure. Also, Kelly, while we've got you, there's a question that came in specifically for you.
Okay.
Let's see. Meek to Sell wants to know if the quilt behind you, if you made it, and they just kind of want to know what the story is on it from an anonymous fan.
I did not make it. My grandmother made it. It was handed down to me after my father died 3 years ago. So my father was an artist and he loved things like this. And so I didn't want it to just lay on a bed. I kind of wanted to use it as a tapestry. So I used it as my window covering. And so that's my grandmother's quilt. And every time I look at it, it reminds me of my father. But my father was an artist. He was a ceramicist. He was amazing at his work. And I do have a piece I wanted to show you.
Awesome.
So this is just like a little plate.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he went through so many different phases in his art. He did this little.
Oh, you're frozen. Come back to us, Kelly. Oh, dang it. Well, we'll try her again in a few minutes. Let's take a couple of Facebook questions while we're waiting for Kelly's signal to juice back up. Okay, let's go to Facebook. Mary says, I'm going to mess this up. Zawinski, I transplanted some lungwort from my aunt's yard. In her yard, the flowers were pink and lavender. In my yard, the flowers are white. Is there anything that I can do to make them bloom pink and blue again? There she is.
There are 3 different varieties of those. So she may have thought she got a pink or blue one, because I have all 3. And I don't think there's any a lot of times people will change the pH, try to change the pH, kind of like at hydrangeas. But I don't know that is, I don't know if that, I'll have to do some research to see if that would affect lungwort or not.
Kelly, the question was, this woman transplanted some lungwort from her aunt's house to her house, and the blooms are different colors this year in her yard than they were before she transplanted. So do you have any idea?
I feel like they're different colors all the time. Don't they open up? Don't they, like, the buds come on a certain color, and then when they open up, they're a certain color? Yeah, I'm not sure. It could just be a different environment. I chalk everything up to the environment. I can't answer a question. I'm like, it's the environment. Yeah.
If she's really interested,
the sun, the rain, the soil, it's something that.
It's something in the environment.
If she's really interested, she might take the pH of her soil and take the pH of her grandmother's soil and see if that's different, and then adjust it accordingly.
Okay. Kelly, can we see that second piece that you were holding up before you froze? Doggone it. We lost her again. Okay, we'll try it again. We'll try it again. Maybe that's her dad playing tricks on us tonight. Bonnie Armstrong writes in, can preen be used on an asparagus bed? What do you think, John?
I would not use any herbicide um, on a in a vegetable garden. I just don't feel safe. I would read the label. The label will tell you if it doesn't say that it's good for asparagus. I definitely would not use it, but I would be very cautious about using any herbicide in vegetable gardening. I just any herbicide, insecticide, I just do not like using on something that I potentially am going to eat. But again, read the label. If it doesn't say that it is good for asparagus, technically it's illegal to use on asparagus then. But if it says it's good for asparagus, then with caution, I guess you could do that. But basically, preen is a pre-emergent, so it's only going to affect those weeds that are new coming up from seed. So she shouldn't have that much if she's mulching her asparagus bed and keeping it. I don't see where preen is really going to be that beneficial anyway.
Okay, all right. Kelly, do we have you by voice? Still on the struggle bus. Okay. Let's see. Daniel writes in, what are the best types of tomatoes to plant? Want them for eating, not too big and beefy. I am not a tomato person. I will grow them, but I don't care for them. So what are your favorite varieties, guys?
As far as a cherry tomato, I love Sun Gold. It's a very thin skinned tomato, but it's very, very tasty. The only problem is if you don't pick them on a regular basis and they're ripe and all of a sudden you get a bunch of rain, they're going to burst, they're going to crack. Sun Sugar has got a thicker skin. I don't think it tastes quite as good, but it is a good cherry tomato. A lot of people love Celebrity, Big Boy, Early Girl. It's just, if you like a yellow tomato, Kellogg is a really good tomato. There's so many different, it depends on what she wants. 4th of July is a medium size, about, that big.
About the size of like a Roma?
Yeah. And they come up, they're the earliest of all the tomatoes as 4th of July or Independence. Some of them call them Independence Day, some of them call them 4th of July. So, but you can usually tell on the package, they'll say 55 days to maturity. And that's usually about as early as you're going to get them, especially for the larger ones. Some of the cherry ones you can get a little bit sooner. But it just depends, it depends on if they like the red tomatoes, yellow tomatoes, purple. Purple Cherokee is another really tasty. And I would, if she wants a really tasty one, Brandywine is another one that is really good. They're the old heirlooms. Mortgage Lifter.
Okay. All
just
right.
to name a few.
Just a few. Kelly, what about you? Do you have any faves?
I discovered Mortgage Lifter 2 years ago. It's huge, delicious. It didn't have a lot of disease problems. I was really surprised at how well it did. I love Cherokee. Don't think it's as prolific as Mortgage Lifter was. And then I'm a Brandywine fan just because I like the disease resistance. I like that it, doesn't get too big and I can, trellis it a little bit. So those are my 3 favorite.
We have Gwyneth says she likes the Jet Star. Have either of you had those?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I've grown them, but not eaten them.
Yeah.
Yeah. They didn't do as good for me as some of the others. So.
Okay. Let's see. David Green would like to know how to keep his hostas from getting sun bleached.
Shade. The main thing is to keep them shaded. You don't, if he's having problems, it's probably not got enough moisture, because a lot of times hostas will scald or sun bleach even especially if they don't have enough moisture. So
Okay.
shade, and he needs to put them in, if they're scalding or bleaching, he needs to move them and put them in a little bit heavier shade probably.
Okay. If you're watching on Facebook, if you've got a question, we've got about 10 minutes left to get those questions answered. Jason, I know you're watching and you're a new gardener this year. So if you've got any questions, Kim, Kristen, Lily, any of you who have a question, you've got two of the best on the line. So while we're waiting for that, let's go to some of our Facebook questions. Let's see, Kelly, let's do 932, DJ. We have discovered we have gall on our hickory nut trees. The trees are very tall. We can't treat by spraying. There's a lot of leaf drop on all three of the trees. Will this kill them? And if so, how quickly? And is there anything that they can do other than spraying since they're so big?
Well, I wouldn't spray them. Galls are something that just kind of happens in nature. I didn't do my research, so I'm not sure if it's a wasp or
it's a stem gall aphid.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Okay, stem gall aphid cause is not going to do any long-term damage in a mature tree. In a young tree, it could do some permanent damage, but then if you've got a young tree, what you need to do is just give it some good fertilizer, water, make sure that that you're helping it along. Also, the eggs like to overwinter in the dead females or in leaf drop. So clean the area away as much as you can. You eliminate a lot of that, but it's not going to harm a mature hickory.
Okay. All right, John, we're going to stay with you. 934. Let's see. Linda would like to know if typical brown grocery store bags are compostable. I see recycle emblems on them, but not anything that tells me if they're compostable. Thanks for your answer. Love the show.
Yep, they are definitely compostable, but you do want to cut them in small pieces. Large pieces can block the oxygen exchange in compost piles, but it is actually the brown matter. You need some brown matter and green matter. This counts as part of the brown matter. So you want 50% green matter, 50% brown matter. Dead leaves, dried up stuff all counts as brown. Grass clippings, live. But the finer you grind stuff up, the faster it's going to compost and the better it's going to be, especially for oxygen. And you want to keep it moist, but not drenched.
Okay. All right, Kelly, I'm going to not pronounce this properly. Holmstrup arborvitae. Did I say that right? We'll go with it. I noticed one bagworm on my arborvitae. There is some browning inside the shrubs. Is now the time to spray, and how heavily do we spray, and do we repeat this treatment?
When it comes to bagworms, what happens is they overwinter in those big, huge bags, and they start to hatch and come out right as, the Japanese tree lilacs are blooming or the catalpas are blooming. And then that means it's time to spray, because what they're doing is they're either crawling on that plant or they're spinning silk and they're going to go to another plant. And so right when that Japanese tree lilac is blooming, maybe 2 or 3 weeks after that is the perfect for bagworms. And it's the only time you can spray for bagworms. If you wait later than that, what is going to happen is they're inside those bags, and they're creating those bags out of the foliage of whatever plant they're feeding on, and they come out of the bag and feed. I actually have a video of them poking their head out of the bag to feed. And so then you really don't have an option. And it's really, it's sad, because when, like for John and I, when people come to us with bagworms, it's usually they have like bagworms all over their trees, and it's in the middle of August, and there's nothing at that point other than, and if you have a mature tree, I mean, you're gonna be picking a lot of bags, especially if it's infested. So now is the time to use a spray for caterpillars. Preferably, we do. I mean, in my articles I talk about BTK or spinosad. John, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, it's now I saw the statewide report, and they are out right now. So I would get a BT or Bacillus thuringiensis and spray that. It's only effective against caterpillars or that type of thing. So very safe for birds and everything else. So if you can't remember that, just remember BT. Go to your garden center, ask for some BT, and I would repeat it in about 7 days, especially if it rains.
All right. Mark McCarthy says, I cut my pine trees up off the ground 4 feet. Do you know of ground cover that does well in pine needles?
A ground cover of pine needles?
Oh, to grow, yeah.
Anything?
I'm not a big fan of growing grass under trees. I think it's just futile because, even though we have some shade tolerant grasses, most of the time they're going to need sun to have a good lush. And we do have some shade ground covers, but it feels like pine, a ground cover under pine trees, you probably would compete. I wouldn't necessarily put a ground cover under pine trees if it were me, but John may have a different opinion.
Well, I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's a blue spruce ground cover. It's blue spruce, and it almost looks like blue spruce needles.
Is it a sedum?
Sedum, thank you. Blue spruce sedum, and I've got it under one of my white pine, and it does wonderfully under that. That's one of the few that I found that tolerates, because it's going to be dry underneath there. So you need something that's almost like a succulent, and the blue spruce sedum is very colorful. It's blue. It stays short. It does put up a little yellow flower that only lasts a week or so, and after that, they're very clean looking. The problem is depending on what kind of a tree, evergreen it is, you have to kind of keep those needles off of them after you get them established. Otherwise, you're going to lose it underneath the needles.
All right, let's go to number 940. I have heard that Epsom salt application to tomatoes can improve the flavor and size. Please give me your input on this. Thanks, love the show. Learned so much. Donna Trimble from Mackinac. So is there truth to this?
There is some truth if you need to test your soil. And the only time really that Epsom salt is going to be beneficial at all is in a potted tomato. And I would do a soil pH test. It's going to do very little in your soil because most of us have tons of magnesium, and that's what Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate. So, but as a foliar spray, sometimes that does help. Once tomatoes start to flower, what you do is take a teaspoon or tablespoon of Epsom salt in a gallon of water and just spray the plant enough to wet it, and it's going to absorb some. Other than that, I really don't see much benefit. Magnesium is needed for cell growth and nutrient uptake. It produces some of the other plants, but most of the time the soil has enough magnesium in it that really I don't see any benefit. And it can do more harm than it can do good, especially if you put too much on.
All right, we've got one. Oh, go ahead, Kelly.
A generalized fertilizer has those micronutrients in it. If you have a deficiency in those types of things, then you need to work on your soil rather than think about adding, growing tomatoes. When it comes to fertilizing tomatoes, I have a rule of thumb. You fertilize 2 weeks after you plant, you fertilize when they start to flower and produce, and then you fertilize every 4 weeks after that. If you're doing, even though tomatoes are heavy feeders, if you're doing more fertilizer, you're wasting your time. We over
And
fertilize
money.
as a garden society. We think that if we are fertilizing every week, we're doing good. But what you're doing is they're not using those nutrients. And really what you need to do is to test your soil and to see how well your soil is doing.
Okay. All right. Last question. This is a follow-up to the pine needles question. Mark wants to know if the pine needles have a toxin that could kill competing plants.
No, but they make the soil more acidic, which is actually good for plants. Plants like to have more acidity. I doubt it. I mean, I grew up in East Texas in the pine forest, and when I walked through the forest, it was just a bed of pine needles. And even though we didn't have an understory, I don't think that, it was because of a toxin.
Okay. All right. One more question. I told a fib.
Okay.
Francesca wants to know what organic fertilizer you would recommend. Either both of you, if you have a favorite, or I know we're not doing plugs, but
if you
if there
get
is
some
one.
composted chicken manure, some composted cow manure, mushroom compost, any of those, just make sure that if you use them, that they are well composted. You don't want to bring manure just straight from the cow, because it's going to burn. It's not, it's just not good for the plant. So.
Okay. Kelly, anything to add there?
Even though I'm definitely a non-chemical type of person at times, I was a greenhouse grower, so it's really hard for me to get away from chemical fertilizers, because they're so fast acting compared to organic fertilizers. Organic fertilizers are so slow. I haven't found one that makes me happy. But I like John's idea, the composted manure. Just know that when the compost, like say you're adding compost, you're just increasing soil tilth, meaning you're making the soil nice. The roots want to get down in there and grow. But when you actually add an animal byproduct, which not mushroom, but manure, then you're actually adding nutrients. So think about that. So if it's plant-based, you're just improving the soil structure. If it's animal-based, you're actually adding nutrients. So I like to add a mix.
Okay. And then as far as application goes, do you guys recommend at the base? Do you till up a little bit? What are your application thoughts?
At time of planting.
Okay. Okay.
And sometimes we do side dressing.
On rhubarb and asparagus, I use side dressing. That's about the only time that I use the side dressing.
Okay. Well, guys, thank you very much for your time and talents this evening. Really appreciate it. We got some great questions in. John, welcome to the fold, the Zoom fold. And thank you all for submitting your questions and watching. We really appreciate it. And we will see you next time on Mid-American Gardener. Good night.